Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. This week I'm sitting down to talk bass for a second time with the legendary Jeff Berlin. Jeff made his name playing in the legendary Bill Bruford band of the 1970s alongside Allan, Holdsworth and Dave Stewart. Since then he's played with pretty much every major name in jazz, as well as performing a huge number of sessions for artists in pretty much every style of music. Jeff is also a major name in the world of bass education. He's taught in many music institutions across America and performed masterclasses all over the world, promoting his no-nonsense academic approach to teaching music and musical content that he developed through years of formal training in both the jazz and classical fields. While his methods are very successful, Jeff has ran into a lot of pushback from certain areas of the bass community, mainly through his criticisms of various music institutions and some popular high-profile players with regard to their non-traditional approach to teaching the instrument. In this interview, I'll be playing devil's advocate once more while delving into Jeff's teaching philosophy, his now infamous opinion on metronomes, and much, much more. So without further ado, I give you the one and only Jeff Berlin. Jeff, here we are again. So this is part two, round two. So we had a good chat last time, and we covered a hell of a lot of stuff. But you did say, and we came to the agreement that it might be worth expanding on a little bit of the stuff and having a second part. So here we are. So I've got a few questions to ask you, some of which have been put forward by people on Facebook and that. So I'll put a few of those to you later on. But to begin with, so what's been happening in the world of Jeff Berlin of late?
I have been rapidly and conscientiously trying to finish my Jack Bruce project, and I have been doing so steadily. The pledge campaign that people pledged money to filed Chapter 11, which means that I and all the artists that had received pledges, one, we don't get those funds for our recordings, and two, the people that pledged have lost their pledge money to receive a product. It's a loss for them and it's a loss for me, and it's terrible that I would announce this, but we're going to make a video about it shortly, make it like a real official thing. Pledge went out of business, and the good news is the hurt part is only about a CD or two. So I've lost money in the music industry. Other people have as well. We've made money in the industry. Other people have as well. So it's a great apology to people about that. But nonetheless, on my own dime and on my own time, I've been working very hard to finish Jack. And I will give a quick synopsis and say that the record is turning out to be, for me, one of my best projects. Everything I do, I'm very fortunate. I haven't hit that point where it's like I'm so old I dotter into the studio and play, you know. My thing has gone up and up and up. The bass tone is better. The bass sound is better. That's the bass tone, isn't it? The bass playing is better. The arrangements are great. So that's my last project. Plus I have a tour next year, which I'm working on a name. Jeff Berlin plays Jack Bruce. And I have a stellar group. So I will be in your neck of the woods, so I must invite you out.
Yeah, definitely.
And there you go. So those are my two particular things. And I'm writing music fairly regularly. So I'm very content with my state in music these days. I don't have the technique anymore like I used to. Those days are over. Oh, these guys can outplay me. I mean, they do stuff and I go, how in the world?
I'm not so sure, Jeff. I've seen you doing some crazy stuff.
Well, I have my thing, but it's logical and actually applaudable that the new generation, you know, younger than I, would carry it even further. So the Hadrian Farads, I think the Damien Erskines, wait, there's so many guys. My mind is blanking. It's the illness, friends. There's so many great bass players that play melodically and freely.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to be playing with you on the album, when it, you know, or was playing on it?
I've already gotten Alex Lifeson to do a solo. Scott Henderson is doing one this week. James Burton, who is actually a guy who was the most generous guitar. He was, if anyone doesn't know James, he's a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He and Brian May, I think, were inducted at the same time. And he's on it. He's an old friend. And he was remarkably, because of my rep as a player of things, he hired me to play Jerry Lee Lewis record, which was zoom, 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 zoom,
Yeah.
zoom, zoom, boom, boom. And I did this, and what I was so honored about, one, is that he believed that I had the capability to play appropriately to the part. Instead of ba-do-do-do, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And
Can you imagine that'd have been hilarious?
Jerry Lee Lewis. It was Blackbird. Bye bye Blackbird. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da. And anyway, so yeah, I'm very honored by his vision to see what I might do and not overplay it. He's the only guy in my memory who ever had that confidence in me. And that makes him special in my musical life.
Have you ever found that that's been a problem through your career, that people assume a certain thing from you, that they think that you're just going to be this shredding fusion jazz, Jacko style, thing, and that you're not going to be able to play simply?
Yes, it absolutely has. But I'm a lucky guy because I'm very good at taking things as they are. So if that is that particular concern amongst producers, I accept it and try to show that I don't only wear that one hat. I'm actually very good in the simple department, and melodic in it if it's needed, and slightly interesting. I literally am okay with everything that is. Everything. I work. I don't work. I'm loved. I'm hated. I'm hated. Despised. I'm worshipped. I'm this and that. I give it the same even keel response, which is, this seems to be some reality that's going on. I will live within it and work amongst this realism, this attitude that prevails, and try to slowly be what I am, and maybe people will catch on to it. But I do pretty well as Jeff. I'm fortunate. It's like I've got 40-something years plucking a bass, and I'm still in demand a little bit here. So I'm very pleased, and my art it's hard to talk like this because it sounds a little self-serving, but the more that I go with the flow, the more things seem to improve.
Yeah. Well, it seems, that's the stereotype, isn't it? When people end up looking at people that have a certain amount of facility on the instrument and just assuming that so that's all they can do. I can't imagine that there's many professional bass players, especially at a certain level, that don't play simple bass lines on a regular basis. That's what everybody has to do. So there's this weird stereotype, and it's usually from, I don't know if it's from jealousy or what, where they'll look at people and think, oh, well, I don't want that on my record. It's like, because I know that you've done so many sessions, and it's like the amount of things that you've probably done in terms of jingles and things like that, where you're just playing insanely simple bass parts that people don't even realize. And
that's okay. That's one of the going with the flow. It's okay. But you're correct. It is the simplistic element of bass is beautiful, and it can be musical, and it can be rhythmical. There's a beauty in simplicity.
Yeah.
Lucky as an older guy, I finally figured that out.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that we didn't touch on last time was your website, and the fact that I never even brought up the fact that you've got a huge number of courses and you've got your big education thing going on there, because you're one of the premier bass educators, I suppose you'd say, on the planet. But you've got a space there, so you've got all that going on at your website. So
yes, sir.
Do you know the web address offhand?
Yeah, I believe it's Jeff Berlin Bass. No, I'm wrong. It's jeffberlinmusicgroup.com. Mm-hmm. It's a simple website. I'm not a great designer, but it does have Vimeo, I think, videos of the first package. And it's 5 complete packages of study principles, and that's it. I don't have, I'll take it back. Each package is quite rich with the content and a lot of it. And it's just meant to be academic regard. Review, play. You never read a note. This is a G. Play it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lo and behold, you're reading. It's not about gigs. It's not about 4 gigs. It's not about 4 songs. It's not about getting better so I can be an artist. It is all of that, seems to be base community inventions about why we read. The reason we read is so that we could learn how to play properly, harmony and notes on a bass. That's it, because all songs practically have the same harmony. It is almost impossible to find music that doesn't have a G major in it, in any style. So because, or C minor, or if you can play C major, then you could play it in this way and then play it in this way. It's the variety of the purity of harmony that gets us to play better. And the better we play and also enter into self-taught principles, there's no better way to learn how to play the bass. You examine and work on the rock things that gives one pleasure, or the funk, or the jazz, or blues. And then you study reading, ba ba da do da da do do da do da. That gives us skill at it, if I may. It's like a 5-source instantaneous music improvement. The note is identified by the eye, seen by the eye, identified by the brain, used by the hands to play it in sequence, absolute sequence, bing, on a bass neck, which we have to learn where the fret is and then execute it. So all these things are going on by reading one note. If you do this for a year, there isn't a piece of music you couldn't play anywhere, almost at any time, and begin to really open up expressive channels for yourself if you're only into your own kind of art. But it is not for gigs, it's not for reading, it's not for songs, it's not for anything other than playing this instrument better. And that's what I call going to the left. What I mean is bass educators don't go to the left enough. Here's this groove, you got to play it with feel. I say don't play the groove with feel. Don't play the groove, don't play the line as a groove. Play the notes, learn the notes, and often out of time, and do it in 12 keys. Because anybody can play a groove. Everybody plays grooves if they know what the notes are. It's just a flat fact. So I go more to the left, what to start with, how to learn how to play better. Or actually, from your visual sense, I guess it's this way.
Yeah. Well, you say it's not for gigs, and you say it's not for performance, and it's not for any of that stuff.
Not in my philosophy. It is.
No,
not for
but
learning,
as a byproduct, it is. It's worth mentioning that for as and of itself, because I know what you're saying, because you see it all the time. People will ask, why do I need to learn to read? You end up saying, oh, well, it's so you can do this and so you can do that. But really, it's so you can read. I mean, it's like saying, well, why do you need to learn to read, in terms of language? Why do you need, well, it's so you can read. But the byproducts of that are that eventually you will be able to do this and you'll be able to do that. But there's too many a list. I'll often be asked, how do you learn the notes on your neck well? And the other one is, how do you learn rhythm well? And I'm like, just learn to read. If you can read, you'll know all the notes on your neck. You don't have to practice it. You don't have to practice knowing which note is which. If you learn to read, you'll know the notes on your neck, because there's no time to start thinking about it. It becomes automatic. So reading's perfect for that. And then rhythm, when people say, oh, how do I work on rhythm and stuff? Well, learn to read. You're going to learn the system of subdivisions and everything. So it's all there. So as a byproduct, you've got all these great things that happen. But I know what you're saying. As and of itself, you're just learning to read.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could answer, why do you need to learn to read? It's very simple. It makes you play better.
Yeah.
Literally, for me, the end of the story. That's why I'm so critical of bass education in its general form, is that there are an astonishing amount of variety of ways to be taught, styles, techniques, concepts, philosophies, thinking, communication, groove, feel, love, nature, heart, art. And ironically, most bass players still struggle with the simplest basic elements of bass.
Yeah.
And there is an astonishing amount of stuff available. So that's long ago what got me to ponder and realize that what reading and what an education is simply about is to crack the ice of the function of a thing. That's it. And that's why I'm saying if you're taught music, you don't have to stop jamming at night and doing the things that you love to do. Reading gets us to move our fingers in unison with our mind and the page. It's a synapse growing brain experience sequenced with the hands. And if you do it for a few months and jam at night and rock out and forget your lessons, this is not supposed to be a replacement. I may have said this before. It's not supposed to be a replacement for anything. It's supposed to be an addition to.
Yeah, supplementary. Yeah,
that's it. And any base educator worth the title, to me, specifies learning in the way that we were taught how to read English and write English in our particular case, or taught how to drive an automobile in our particular case, or how any foreign language student, foreign from whatever our native language is, it has always been, or taught math, or taught anything that is specific. A recipe for cooking a soup says specifically 3/4 of a cup, not kind of, sort of, however feel works.
Yeah.
So that's really just the nutshell of it. And if I teach that way, then even the student doesn't even have to worry about what to do or what to think. Just follow orders. It's like, it's all that weight is off their shoulders. Because so many guys say, well, how do I look at this? How do I approach this? What do I do about that? It's very often asked. And the truth is, it's on me. I'm supposed to completely be responsible for your progress. Completely. Your job is to do what I say. I won't name him. I will not name him. I won't even go there. See, this can be dangerous. Let me put it this way. It has been alluded by certain sources in very unique, oh boy, I'm trying to word this.
You're trying to avoid the conflict.
It has been acceptable at certain schools where it has been told to me by certain figures in education that not everybody is going to improve. And not everybody's going to get the benefit out of music lessons. And I took that to mean that some guys who have paid whatever they've paid to go to schools will improve, but other guys won't. And I found that one of the most shocking admissions that I'd ever heard, because I have a philosophy that no matter how many people are under my charge, everybody is going to improve, but they have to meet me halfway through the work.
Are you sure that quote isn't meaning that some people will go to, let's say, a music college or something like that? Because I've seen this a lot. They'll go there and they're just not actually bothered about learning, so they are not going to follow through on it. Now, I understand that because in that instance, music lessons won't develop that person's, because they've got to put the time in.
Oh, yes, I absolutely agree with you. I just took the philosophy to be, if I had that, even if people did go there for a casual approach, I would have to make sure they understood that to do this, they've got to meet me halfway. There's a meet me halfway, which means is I'll provide them, do the work to learn it. And doing the work isn't painful, backbreaking, or an ordeal of an arduous, any other euphemism, any other metaphor. It's simply doing the work. I'm astonished at the number of adult musicians that are terrified of music in the bass community. It's an astonishingly shocking thing to me. Buck up, because it's not horrible. It just takes a little time. You made a mistake, fix your mistake.
Now, this is where I take, where I could play devil's advocate.
Play away.
Because don't you think, I suspect that, you say that people aren't teaching people the correct way and teaching to read and all this kind of stuff. I've always been under the impression that that people are teaching that way, because I mean, that's how I learned, and that's how I see everybody. Like we talked before about, Zoltan Dekani. He teaches at my old music college now, and Zoltan's great. And
Right.
I'm pretty sure that it's at Leeds College of Music up in Yorkshire, and I'm sure that they'll be teaching exactly the same, pretty much as what it was when I was there. And reading is a part of it, and harmony, the whole bit. And I'm just unsure that it's almost like you're saying that this is an issue, and I'm not too sure that it is.
Okay. Shall I answer? Or?
Yeah, because I don't want you to give direct examples. Obviously, it's just that I just don't see it that much that people like for instance. Now I know there will be people out there that won't teach because they don't have the ability. Right? Because there's people that won't be able to do it. So, like, let's take reading, for instance. Like, I'll always teach reading because I see it as being an important, valuable skill, blah, blah, blah. But then there's going to be people that can't read, and they're not really going to be able to teach reading. But
Sure, yeah.
I would have thought that the majority of academic institutions would have definitely had that as being a part. Every place that I've ever been or taught at, you would be tested every year on your, part of the exams. You're going to have a sight reading exam. There's going to be all of that stuff. So so that's my devil's advocate part anyway.
Okay. Well, if it was mandatory that every student was taught fairly well the same way, fairly well the same content, I would agree 100% with you that everybody, you're a rocker, here's a minor major 7 exercise to play in 12 keys. You're a jazzer, some minor majors. Here you're a blues guy, you're a funk guy, you're a slap guy, you're a thumb guy, you're a tapping. Here's a minor major 7. The issue that I have had and what I've noticed is that as soon as style, blues, rock, gospel, funk, metal became accredited courses or courses of interest, it was taken out of the self-taught paradigm and put into an academic setting and individualized each student to where if this is what they wanted to learn, this is what they would be taught. So the problem that I see is that in every area of law and its variety of types, corporate law, contractual law, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Constitutional law. Every law student begins with the same courses and begins with the same basic training.
As with medicine, yeah.
As with medicine, I think as in anything that is accredited course, college course instruction, bass playing isn't like that. There's a lot of courses that have deviated that you like this, we'll teach you this. You like that, we'll teach you that. And in different places, I can give you one little example. I think, was it Guilford, where they took heavy metal and gave it a degree program, a heavy metal degree program, I think. It was the first one. It might have been Guilford. I'm trying to recall. And a music that is essentially a garage event, a slowing out, developing tone, playing skills, and producing 100% of all heavy metalists, is now enabled to get you a verifiable legal degree of music from the study of it. Now, I won't debate publicly. I have my feelings about it, but I won't debate publicly its merits. I'm saying is that when schools deviate from the purity of the teaching of musical content based in harmony as all these styles, the student is the loser for it. Because they have denied the student what they need and instead prepared for them what they want. And what do they know? What they need. So are they, you ask? In my opinion, yes. And I think all one has to do is just check out a couple of the class availabilities in different schools, and you will see it. And I don't mean to, let me finish this up. I don't mean to criticize to cause harm. I'm saying is this is what I see as a legitimate problem in base education. And as people are spending money, nothing's going to change. I'll shut up now.
I'm glad you clarified, because I completely agree on that. It's something that over the past 20 years, minimum, maybe more, has started to, because I was involved in music education, in overall music education for not that long. I mean, I took a break from playing to teach, pretty much. And in the institutions that I was in, it was starting to come in. And I do agree, it is watering down the overall music. So I'm glad you clarified that. But I don't see that as being base education necessarily. That's a problem with music institutions in general. Because that's not base teaching. What that is that's coming up with various courses for financial reasons. It's so that they can actually bring out, you come in, get as many people in as you can, just take all the money that you can from all of those people, and it's like, oh, you do heavy metal, oh, come on in. Just like, oh, I know what you're saying. And I think clarifying that, it all makes a little bit more sense to me. But like I say, I don't think it's necessarily based teachers in particular. I think that's just the nature of the courses.
Well, I refer to bass teaching because that's what I play, that's what I do, and that's what I have noticed. See, my comments refer to my instrument. I'm out to criticize the world for its faults. It's a terrible attitude. I would have to do that. I'm trying to be specific. If everything I try to share is that my approaches and thoughts are narrow, as narrow as be, that concept, this approach, it's not broad. Broad to me is the end of progress, because broad is vague and doesn't specify much. You can't improve by doing a little Stravinsky at this hour and then a little bit at this hour, focus, and then a little bit of funk at this hour. It's just smorgasbord instruction doesn't work. Pinpoint instruction does. And once it's over, it's fairly well over. There are guys, I'm 66, and most of the responses I get these days are from guys from 40 to 60 who have commented, well, I wish I'd listened to you, 25 years ago. Anything that I talk about is right to that point. So in the way that education has deviated from specific musical attention to the students who can't often tune their instrument by their ear.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a dearth. And the reason why a lot of bass instruction doesn't go towards the musical content that I refer to is because most, not all, bass instructors aren't schooled in musical content to where they can teach it. I have a particular overview. I'm not better than anybody. I see things because of my training. That's all that it is. It's if you know more about something and I say, well, no, football, you got to kick with the left foot, not the right foot. Everybody should. And you say, well, wait a minute, I'm involved in football. I've trained in it. I've been taught it. Well, no. See, you think everybody should be like you and miss the point that you may have a knowledge I don't. So I have an overview, and I could save people years tonight if they're willing to try it, or people like me, other guys that have this background. But that's the reason why I'm sort of alone in the visual or the statements that I make, is because
I don't think you're alone, though, Jeff. I think that the majority of the things that you say are, I agree with pretty much. This is just me. I agree with most of what you say in terms of what, like the reason I was just going to interject then, that when you were saying about the institutions, where, heavy metal courses and all this kind of stuff. But let's just take me, for instance. If I was going to go into somewhere and it was like it had a heavy metal course or something like that, or whatever the style, country and western course, whatever the style, If I was hired freelance or whatever to go in and teach, do the bass lessons there, my bass lessons wouldn't be any different because you're not under the jurisdiction of the syllabus in the same way. So if I was going to go in and teach bass, I'd be teaching reading, I'd be teaching all the same stuff that I would have normally taught. Chord tones, the whole bit, ear training, whatever. That would all be the stuff that I'd actually be teaching, regardless of it. Which is why I say I think there's a big distinction to be made between the actual academic institutions and the courses that they're now running for the want of, books, and then the actual teachers that go in there, because there's a lot of great teachers around. There's a lot of guys that know what they're doing, and I think that sometimes they might get influenced by whatever that place is. But like we were saying, Zoltan, you know Zoltan really well. He's going to go in there. If that place was teaching heavy metal, he'd still be teaching the same stuff. And I think it's more an institution and the courses thing rather than the actual base teachers. And it's one thing that we didn't fall out over it at all, but it was one thing that we were debating several months ago on let's say Facebook or whatever. And I was bringing up that point that I was unsure that it's actually a thing that happens in the base education. Now, aside from that, outside of music colleges and all that kind of stuff, then it's a Wild West. I mean, then it's a free-for-all, I mean, then it's like whoever, because any Tom, Dick, and Harry can put up a YouTube channel, I've got one. So, anybody can put one up. And then you just, and then it's down to whether that person is going to teach that stuff.
It's the planet's problem. And you're right earlier, you said it might be all instruments, but I'm a bass player, so I'll point to bass. And the difficulty is if bass teachers know content, they'll teach it. And I'm not sure they do, because you got to learn content. You have to study musical content. You have to know it well. The word theory seems to be slightly misused. It isn't theory. I looked at theory as a description of music in general. Music in its general way and its analysis of motion and stuff. I look at harmony and reading is more accurate for bass players. This is a minor chord. This is how you practice it. Done. Next page. This is a major 7. This is how you do it. This is a minor 7 flat 5. But now we're not going to use it as a flat 9, but a natural 9. These things make us better and better and better and better, because nobody hearing this has to learn what the word cookie means anymore. Nobody has to learn what the word appropriate means. Nobody has to learn what the word, convalescing means. We know these words. So in music, once we've learned these notes and practiced these notes that we'll find in every rock song just about that you will ever hear, or funk or pop or rock or blues, that's the benefit that we talked about earlier, the learning, which is not artistic, becoming a better bass player, synchronizing mind, eye, hand, and instrument, which many bass players can't do. And I don't think one teacher teaches specifically, and the lack of these particular, and that's what I learned as a violinist. That's why I'm saying I have an overview from my background. You learn to go bing, 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 and it's not art. It isn't Mendelssohn. It's bang, 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 and that's where I come from, and I went off on a tangent.
But I like I said, I think I think people do. I think people. There's more bass teachers out there that agree with you than you think.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what. I've acknowledged these bass teachers. I've acknowledged and applauded and have said in many, many posts, and I hope people remember this, that if you can find a bass teacher enlightened in the course of music and its content and can teach it, go there. Because these are my real colleagues of education, and I admire them. And I think that everybody should be grateful that they're out there.
Like I said, I'm a proponent of what you do, of what you've taught, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you've taught as well, like Phil Mann and Zoltan and people like that are all putting that out there. But I know so many people that would be teaching the same stuff. Like I've said, I mean, my entire roster of courses is reading, harmony, ear training, that whole chord tones, the whole bit. And it's just that's, basically the nuts and bolts of music. And I think a lot of I think there's a lot more than you probably think. I think a lot of those guys will also agree with you. Even though
I'm very glad that they're out there, man.
But I think that's where sometimes people get wound up a little bit when you say these things, because they might be thinking, well, hold on, let's say it's another bass teacher, not me, for instance, like somebody else, and they do teach this stuff, and then you're there saying this, like, nobody teaches any of this, and it's like, that's what I'm teaching, you know? And so they kind of feel almost like it's an attack on them, when in fact they're actually putting that into practice. I think sometimes that's where some of this, you know, this rub up comes from, in my opinion.
I hear you, and I can acknowledge that, and as often as I've tried, the difficult thing for me to do is to cover every area where misinterpretation might take place. One of them I have made quite often attempts to cover, which is if you find a teacher, and if there is a teacher who teaches content of music, hopefully in a jazz bent, jazz philosophy, go there. We need them. Study there. Go to these people. I said they're out there. I said they're hard to find, but they're out there. Somebody who will sit you down and say, today you're going to do this written exercise. Charlie Benakis used to give me 4-bar lines.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. That was it. And what he assigned me to do was mind-blowing with it, with a 4-bar figure. So yes, I acknowledge these people and applaud these people and call them my colleagues. And if anyone ever mentioned, in fact, a lot of guys have on, if you've noticed from reading the thing, is, well, I teach musical content, and you'll notice it. I mean, I'll stand up for myself for a little bit and saying, great, we need you. Community of us, the world community needs this, because I'm not talking about art. I'm not talking about style, flavor, playing, tone, anything. I just don't mention it. I'm talking the most narrow, little, tiny.
Yeah, and
this is music education. That's all.
This is where I made that that distinction with YouTube. That's why I brought it up, because I think what can happen is that for someone like yourself, you might look at the general bass lessons or whatever, like stuff that I might put out, you know, in those lessons, or what we call lessons. They're more tips. They're more like little sound bites. It's like that's why I call it talking bass. We're just talking about bass, but of course that's not academic training, as you know, as you would be talking about. But that's why I'm saying that it's really, I think it's really important, especially for people like yourself, to not look at something like YouTube as being the general consensus of what bass teaching is all about, because it really probably isn't.
I've not reflected that much on YouTube. I really. I also have a philosophy that the talking element, and I don't state this as anything other than what I believe that it is, which is an entertainment.
Yeah.
If you use a pick this way, or if the strap, or when I rest my arm, it's a chat room kind of hang, and it's nice. And the ultimate thing about these things, and the astonishing quantity of bass information that is out there, as I mentioned before, is bass players better from it. Whereas a lot of guys talk about having their own style or trying to find their own way. The way that people do this is not by putting the strap, as one might discuss, and the pick, as one might do. The way one would improve their bass playing is by putting their strap on in the most uncomfortable, ridiculous manner, and then eventually figuring it out a little bit, that would relax and be better for them. It's the doing of. The thing isn't that you hold a pick and that if you do it this way, because maybe you need to drop that pick 400 times till you realize, oh, I should have put the tip up here. Yeah. See, what has happened in bass education, I believe, is that any contingent of difficulty that could come across your path has been anticipated and solved before you even got there.
Yeah.
Bass players haven't the chance to fall and get up, stumble, get up, trip, get up.
Yeah.
Sound. Bass players are really not happy. Excuse me, I will go into a little language here. Bass players are not content with sounding like shit, when exactly sounding like shit is what we need to do. Eliminate on our own efforts to sound like shit. And literally, sir, 100% of every bass player that anybody can think of went through that tenureship, that apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And sounded as awful as one might sound, fixing as they went to emerge to become the guys that we all admire today. But bass education, well, you want to learn the blues, here's a class. You want to learn funk, here's a class. You want to learn slap, one of the more ridiculous classes, in my opinion, here's slap. Here's how you use your thumb. Well, what do I do if there's no slap class? You're out of luck, in my opinion. Study it, but if you can't figure out from the 10,000 things, if one can't figure out, I think there's something wrong either in the class or with the student who won't sit down and go, look, I know what it is. Let me work on it and sound like shit so that I can fix it and one day not sound like shit. And that's what everybody does. But bass education, to me, has literally cleaned the road. It has made it so pristine and so perfect. Anticipate. I think you're teaching jamming, man. I wish how to jam. So you can what? Listen to your other guy. What? So you can interact with the band. What? So you can so you could lock with or whatever. You don't lock with drummers, by the way. A good band member locks with the band, for the most part. So these are the things, and I'm like sitting there going, these poor fellows, they don't know what they're hearing.
It's just to put content out there. Because really the stuff that you're mentioning is all stuff that you do in a practical sense. You get in a band, you play with other people. That's how you learn. I mean,
100% of us.
Yeah, I mean, and like you say, I used to practice I'd try and set it. I think it was Stanley Clarke that actually gave me this idea that instead of trying to get a nice tone out of my bass in practice, get the worst tone that you can possibly get. Put your mids right up, take your treble up, turn your bass right down, and then it's just going to sound awful. And then you'll be able to hear every little grindy, horrible noise. But then when you get a lovely tone on stage or whatever, everythhing's great. Your position shifts are wonderful. And that's how I used to do it. I used to, for position shifts, if you get the worst sound that you can possibly have, those, you're going to hear all the noise and that. And I found that really, really useful. But it's all about sounding rubbish and trying to avoid sounding rubbish in practice. And
people are scared to sound bad.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
We're scared of music, and I mean that. And bass teachers are sometimes enabling them. Well, learning should be fun. No, it shouldn't. Learning should not be fun. Learning should not be awful. Learning should not be happy. Learning should not be sad. Learning should be learning. That's all. Here's a recipe. Learn this recipe to make. I have a great recipe to make bean soup. Well, I will learn it because I'm having so much fun. Or I shan't learn it because I'm not having fun. A recipe is a recipe. It is a step-by-step procedure to learning how to do something with a good result at the end.
Yeah, I think as well as that, it's not that it's not fun, and it's not that it's not fun. It's not. It's neither. It's completely. It's unbiased in that sense.
Precisely.
I think,
but bass education often teaches that it should be fun. Students say it.
It can be fun, but but the learning itself, as and of itself, doesn't have any kind of innate fun. But that's not to say that you won't have fun doing it. That's the thing. It's just that you trying to expect fun out of learning a major 7 arpeggio is just a kind of pointless exercise, really. It's not going to bring you joy, is it, really? But
it doesn't bring an improvement of synapse growing, finger sequencing, mind and eye and papers,
Yeah.
Everything that everybody wants. You want technique? Read notes. Because you have to know what the note is in order to represent it. Technique right there in a written pitch.
Right, there's 2 other things that I really wanted. I didn't touch on them last time, and I regretted not doing it, but here we go. Right, first things first, metronomes. So you've become synonymous with metronomes. You're like the guy that hates metronomes. And I've chatted to people online about this a few times. Now, I've said it before, I have no dog in this fight whatsoever because I've used metronomes before, but I don't necessarily use them on a daily basis. I don't care either way. In my opinion, they're just a tool. They're just like a fitness, like a Fitbit, like a fitness tracker. They're so unimportant, but
what happens is that whenever I've got a feeling that you kind of think the same thing in a way, but you become so militant with the metronome thing in people's eyes that I've now seen people, especially people like your followers and things, that have become like completely anti-metronome, as if the metronome is this, like the Antichrist, you know. And it's just simply a tool for registering a tempo. So let's talk metronome. So first of all,
let me ask a question.
Go for it.
Register tempo. May I ask of what?
Well, beats per minute.
Of what?
How do you mean?
Well, if you're going to have beats per minute, you have to have something that requires the beats per minute. You have to have a piece of music.
So you're going to have to know the time signature for a start.
Of what? Of what music are you referring? This is where it has never been made clear to me. When people say they check with a metronome, which I refute the importance of. You said, what you just said at space, that I stopped you, that you needed to check.
No, I didn't say you need to. I just said that's what it does. It just performs a pulse. It just creates a pulse. It has no real... I mean, because that pulse, without a time signature, without any kind of reference point, is just a ticking.
Yeah, my question is, of what? What are you putting the metronome on for that you feel it's a tool? What is required of a metronome?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't necessarily feel like I need it for anything, but there are things that I made a few notes actually before I came. I thought, what do I use a metronome for? So,
what do other people use it for?
I know what a lot of people use it for. The standard go-to would be if somebody's learning a lick and then they want to get it faster, and they want to, just as you might do with weights, and you might write down, today I'm doing 10 kilos or pounds or whatever you're going to do, and the next day it's going to be 15, and so that just registering it so you can keep a log. Some people will use it for that. I don't, but I know some people will, right? So
can I comment about that as we go?
Yep.
When you add weight on in a weightlifting regimen, the idea is to become stronger.
Mm-hmm.
People have the idea that if you keep increasing clicks, you'll become faster. The question is twofold. One, why do you have to go faster when music isn't about speed, and technique as well isn't about speed? What is the goal of increasing tempo when, in fact, there isn't any reason to if the music doesn't call for it?
Well, I know what you're saying, because I always think if I'm going to be practicing something and it's something quite quick, let's say, there's something that's technically difficult that I need to learn, I'll practice it slow rather than fast, because it's a better way of creating the neural pathways. If you can learn something slow, it's always harder slow. You'll get the actual memory for the actual movements a lot better, you know, looking at it in that kind of microscopic way. So yes. I kind of see it that way. And I think most people that have ever learned anything like that kind of agree with that you learn it. I'm guessing that's how you would do it too. You just learn it slow, and speed will come over a period of time. Now,
I'll even learn it at a time.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not saying that that's what I would do. It's just that I know that people would do that. So, but I have had a few instances of that. I was once learning a part. It was for, I think I was learning an instrumental part from a Frank Zappa tune, actually. It was St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast. And it was this really tricky line. And it's not actually played on bass on the original, but I wanted to learn it. It's what Zappa used to give the bass players often, which you've done as like a reading thing. So I'm sat there learning this thing, and I was thinking, oh man, I'm never going to get this up to tempo. So I found out what the tempo was, and I think it was about 118, 120 beats per minute, something like that. And I thought, I'm going to start slow, and I'm just going to keep playing it, and then I'm going to edge my way up so that I can do it that way. And that's how I did it. And I just edged my way up slowly, and I was able to keep track of what my progress. Now, I'm not saying that I was using that for learning. I'd already learned the notes. I got the notes down way before I introduced the metronome, because I do agree, putting a metronome in there while you're learning something is pointless. You've got to get it down before you've put the metronome into play. Otherwise,
sure. Most teachers agree with that too.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be silly to think, oh, I've got to learn it with the metronome on. It'd just be a distraction. So anyway, that's one of the ways. Okay, but like I say, I don't do that necessarily. One of the other reasons I would personally use one is if I'm doing a transcription for somebody. So if I've got a gig doing a transcription, which I've done in the past. So let's say it's for an online thing or for a magazine or whatever. And they've given me a job to transcribe this particular thing, and they want to have the beats per minute of that thing next to it. If a metronome isn't used, how am I supposed to know what metronome marking I'm supposed to put on there? I need a metronome to measure what the original tempo is so I can put that marking on it. And that's financially that's a job that I've been given to do. So there's one use of it where I would be using it as a tool.
Well, yes, and that is a separate issue to me in that I recorded the other day, I used click track. I can't almost recall ever recording in the last whatever number of years where I didn't. So I recognize the need and the function of click tracks in the music industry today. That's perfectly legitimate, etc. You have a thing that has to go, yeah, but now, if one uses a click to do it and increases it, they could do that. I don't have any real problem with the business or the use of click in regard to the business of recording a bass part of any kind. My one particular comment about it, which most people seem to hold to, is that they use it in order to develop good time.
Yeah, I don't agree with that one. I'm with you, but I don't. This is where I actually, because that's the main one that that I think everybody's seen you mention many times, and we've all seen the demonstrations of and the talking about Latin America and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I agree, but I don't really think that many people are thinking.
Okay, now. I'd like to see if there's a line you could mention or something musical that I have never played before. Is there anything you can? I'll go with whatever you come up with.
Has it got to be something that you've already heard, though?
It would help if it was.
Okay, here's an example. So, here's one that you've already played. So, I remember learning for an exam, actually an entrance exam, Bach's second prelude from the Well-Tempered Clavier, which is the one that you used for Bach. I think it was yeah. So that's it. So when I very first learned that, I remember actually using a metronome with that just to measure what tempo I was actually playing it at, because I didn't have a clue. I knew that I was playing semiquavers at 16th notes. But I wanted to keep track of how I was doing in terms of it day to day. So that was actually one where I did do that. That was a long time ago.
All righty. I'll take that as a demonstration. I think I remember I played it up here, didn't I?
Yeah, there's two parts. There's the bass line. Yeah, that's the top part.
I didn't play this on the record.
No, it's the bass line, which is an octave down, yeah. I think you did play it down the octave, though. I think. Yeah, that's where I'd normally play it. I think that is.
So what I wanted to show you was, here I am practicing it, and I'll go click, 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 click. Damn it. Let me start again. Click, 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 click. Damn it. I cannot keep to this click. It's not that I have to check myself, because improvement is rarely definable by incremental increases in tempo. It's definable by something that will show up 3 to 4 months later. So if I was stumbling now, no, I better slow this down. So clearly can't rely on a steady thing because that's performance. I have to learn it.
Yeah.
But I will submit that if I had to perform it today, so how would I be able to play this in time? It's by the steady review and practicing, fixing my mistakes. If it's too fast here, I would slow it down. My time is almost perfect. It's human, so it's not going to be click, click, click. And I submit that if I had to, so I can then double that due to my ability to play faster, not that I pushed myself to play faster. The reason that I could play this, having not played that in 15, 20 years and go boom, is because all my life as a bass player, I didn't push myself to play faster. What I did, see, the distraction of a metronome, I feel, and what the, I don't want to say damage or harm, what's a lighter synonym? The interruption of tempo improvement has come from is that people confine a click to a song. If I get this song faster, then I've improved. And you haven't really. You've improved in a song and a bass part that anybody would have done without a click anyways, and I'm proof of it. Either I'm a genius or I'm a guy that's well practiced. I just can't think of a third option.
I agree,
I'm
Jeff.
no genius.
I
So
agree. I've got no argument with that at all. I mean,
well, let me just finish this up, and it's very quick. It's very quick. I'm not telling people what to do. I really never really have. I'm telling people what will happen if they do it. That's all. It's obvious. I'm not telling you not to smoke. I'm telling you that if you smoke, this is what's going to probably happen. And so in that thinking, when people get a little bit miffed at my narrow attention to this, I'm trying to eliminate problems for people and allow them to improve as musicians improve. And the way we improve is the simple doing. It's the doing of the Bach C minor without a click, if they choose to, and they would get it as equally as well and as equally as fast over the time that it takes to practice and improve as a bass player. The click is a bit of a kind of a sheen, of a kind of a covering of the truth of what it takes in order to have technique.
And like I said, I mean, I am playing devil's advocate with that because that isn't something that I myself, I don't think I would do it. I've done it a few times just in terms of keeping track because I've been curious as to what speed I'm actually doing it. And then
it's a different thing.
Okay.
It's different.
But in terms of actually hoping that it's going to, you know, like I said, I would practice it slow. And I would always say that to anybody. If you want to learn how to play quicker, you learn things slowly. And it seems almost counterintuitive, that advice, but everybody says it. Everybody with any modicum of technique is going to say, get down the minute. You know, Yannick Guizdala is a great example of someone that's got bags of technique. He's like, you know, all over the place. And he always says the same thing. He just sits there practicing things as slow as he can. Just because
he's absolutely right. He's very, very capable, smart, good guy, good teacher. He knows his thing. Yannick, you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant cat, man. Brilliant cat. Totally into music, totally into teaching it. I really admire him.
Yeah.
I always my metronome thing wound him up, and it wound up a lot of guys. Ed Freeland.
Well, yeah, I think it's because my take on this is that it's so unimportant and like I don't think anybody uses, even in that case that I presented, which again I say I don't do, but I know that people will do it in terms of bringing up speed. I don't think anybody uses it as a crutch, and I don't think actually anybody takes it that seriously as a practice thing. I mean, all right, some people might, but it's just such a... I'm just worried that somebody like yourself that has such a legacy and, you know, such a background, such a body of work, might end up especially in these days of the internet and the different, we know how social media works and how it can be dangerous. Someone like yourself with all that body of work and all that stuff could end up becoming the metronome guy, so that people actually look at you and think, oh, he's the guy that's got issues with the metronome. And it's like, no, it's such an unimportant thing. And every time I see that you bring it up again, I'm thinking, Jeff, it's not that big a deal. It's not that important. Don't worry. Don't bring it up again, because people start talking about it as if it's important. And I've seen people like that might be your followers that will take all that on. Not that that has anything to do with.
I don't want followers. I want people that, if it makes sense to them, to subscribe to it. But I absolutely reject the idea and ask people, don't be a fan of me for my stance. Just respect or don't respect what I say, and that's fair. But go ahead.
Exactly. But you know what it's like in this world. Sometimes people just like a guru figure, and and it doesn't matter who it is. They'll just. There's the fanboys who will go with every little thing that you say, even if they've misinterpreted it.
I'll give you, and I'll end, if I may, on the importance thing. For months and months and months on this great site, the Bass Guitar. Wonderful site, wonderful moderators, wonderful participants, very nice people, almost everybody. The things I've talked about for months: find a teacher that teaches reading, find a teacher that teaches jazz, practice without a metronome, don't pay to be taught styles, don't pay to be taught a technique. There's a litany of things that I've sort of cycled through, and the metronome is not important to you. It's important if people use it as a device that will help them to get good time, because no one else is telling or mentioning that it won't. That's really what it basically is that I can't find anyone I don't say things to wind people up. I basically dismiss almost all interpretations of why I do things on the internet. I can understand that, I did it because I'm this, and I'm arrogant, I'm an egotist, I'm Asperger's, I'm Burger King, So I fairly well dismiss this, because I know when people are a little upset with the message and how they feel how it comes over. And I apologize, that I do, about the interpretation of it, but it's not on me. I offer thoughts because nobody else is doing it. And all I'm saying about the metronome is that I'll bring it up, and then you'll notice it's gone for whatever number of times. I'll go back and review, let's say, reading, because so many guys say, I don't want to read. Reading messes with your art, or these type of things. So all I'm doing is putting it out there. Thoughts. People will do with it as they wish. People can regard me as they wish. People are entitled completely to interpret what I say. But I'm saying things in the face of an industry and a community and a time where my thoughts are not welcome, which I understand. And they're only based on the learning element of music. And when my problem is I actually wrote that I can't debate people anymore, because everybody sort of has to get, yeah, but. However, lately, some guys will go, well, that's true. Even you said some today, and I appreciate it. I repeat it because it's necessary to repeat. It is important. If people want to develop good time, there's a way to do it. If you want to learn how to play faster, you play faster.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, that Prelude number 2, I mean, that wasn't intended to be played to a metronome. Nobody in the Baroque period would have been practicing that to a metronome. But it's, like I've said, I just think it's an unimportant thing, really. But I think other people make it out to be, because they take offence at it. So I think they sometimes take it to be more important than it is.
I'm sorry that they do take offence. I mean it.
But do you ever play up to that a little bit? You know,
No.
when not at all. So,
No.
like, you know, like with the metronome thing, because it's become such a not a meme now, but like such a thing that it's almost like you might, you know, it's going to trigger a response. So I'm just wondering if you ever just pop it out there, like, oh, they'll like this. Oh, I'll just put it out there again, and whoa, here they go.
Never, not once, do I ever post anything of any kind of any thought in order to put a pin into people. Ever. The idea is to repeat a message again and again and again, because amongst the people that often get a little bit miffed at the repetitiveness of it, every single time, Mark, somebody writes back and said, you know, I checked out what you were saying and I found that this seemed to be true. I want to thank you about it. But it's never failed, never, that every 2 months that I bring up a metronome or bring up about a reading, or every 3 months where it cycles through.
Yeah.
He doesn't private message me and go, you know, I thought you were this and that. I checked it out, and lo and behold, there is a kind of a benefit for me, and I want to thank you. It never, never, never fails. But I seem to be the only guy that's actually guiding people to looking at learning how to play in time differently than basically is adapted as an attitude by the whole world community.
Again, I'm not so sure, Jeff. I think
I'm not wrong, but that's how it.
I'm not saying that you're not doing that. You obviously are. I just mean that I think the thoughts that you're expressing are, you know, I think everybody kind of thinks. I mean, even me, I would say exactly the same thing. You know, it's like, you know, you got to learn the stuff before you put it to the metronome. And I don't think anybody seriously thinks that they're going to generate this great time field just by playing to a click track. I mean,
I beg to differ. People have told me straight that that's why they do it.
Well, there might be. I mean, they might think that's what's going to happen. But those people, right? If you were,
that's what the point is. That's why people think this. People believe these things. I'm trying to coerce people, or encourage people, or shove people, or coerce. Is that the right word?
Coerce, yeah.
Coerce is to force you, right?
Coerce, to beckon, yeah.
Well, to beckon, if I can, is to say to review this, to re-regard this. So I didn't make these things up. I heard the other day from a young lady who I finally had to block because there was nothing that I could say. Not one thing over weeks that made her do anything except play sort of an antithetical point of view. And I finally blocked her. But she told me about a particular school and how they were doing tests with clicks. These are influencing students. This is the norm in this industry. So I felt it was important enough to review. And for the 4 guys that every single time seem to get a little light go off. So I don't mean to cause harm, and if it bothers people, have a laugh at me, man. I mean, enjoy me as that figure, metronome guy. So I'm the metronome guy. But
you're a better man than I with that. I wouldn't be able to resist. I'd be trying to trigger people all the time with it if that's what I was known for.
I'm not trying to trigger people. It's a kind of a misnomer. You know, I'm a troll. I'm a this. I'm a what is it again? I'm a burger whopper. You know, I'm not. I'm a guy that has a point and invite people. Now the latest thing is I say, show me where I'm wrong. I'll stop. Right then and there, I will stop these messages. In the posts that I offer, show me where I'm an error. I'll stop it. But
well, I'll finish up with a couple of little points that one of which was asked by the community out there, and one thing I wanted to ask actually about your playing, and really, I mean, I don't actually see people talk to you about your technique much. You know, it's always about everything else, and like, so I know that you've always been known as being a guy that's got, you know, great technique, and I know that you played it down earlier, but we all know, you know, you've got great technique.
Not compared to Hadrian Farad, I don't.
Yeah, but you were a pioneer back in those days.
All right.
And now, one of the things that I remember Billy Sheehan saying something about you. He was talking about 3-finger picking and saying that some people just don't need 3-finger picking because look at Jeff Berlin. He could play any of that with 2 fingers. And, you know, you're always known for your facility in terms of your picking and stuff. But the one thing that I've noticed on a lot of your playing is it's not necessarily about this hand. It's more about your about your left hand. Because one of the things that I've noticed in your playing, I mean, I'm guessing most people notice, is your legato kind of feel. It's very Allan Holdsworth-esque in that sense, and someone
Yes,
who's played
it is.
with a lot. And is that something that you consciously tried to do, or was it just something that naturally happened? And I'm guessing some of it comes from trying to mimic sax and things like that. But is that purposely done?
Yes, it was. And it wasn't to imitate sax. And ironically, it wasn't to imitate Allan. It was to go in the other direction of the type of bass playing that became exceptionally popular among the great technically able bassists, which is that sort of,
Yeah.
you know, that fast,
staccato, almost staccato. Yeah.
you know, that thing. I can't even do it anymore because my thing became.
It's a very lyrical, melodic way of playing, yeah.
I liked it because I felt it was different. Over the years, I've never really been blessed with an idea of a style. Jaco Pastorius had a style. Larry Graham had a style. Stanley Clarke had a style. Jack Bruce had a style. And I never quite had one. And so when people started to play fretless, I did for a few months and then quit right away. And when anything became a popular approach, I went the other way. And by eliminating a popular source of playing, I managed to enter into something else and find something unique there. So people, I think we did this the last time, where people played through 10s with tweeters,
yeah,
15s without. People play active basses, mine is a passive, you know.
Yeah. It's the contrarian in your personality.
It was a musical need to be contrarian. Yes, sir, you're right. Absolutely true. That if somebody...
Well, there's so many Jacko clones out there for a start, yeah.
It's a popular thing. It's still done. And what I mean to say is that every time that my contrarian musical nature determined that this was a popular way to play, I went in another direction and developed something from it. Finally, the last sort of thing was that sort of... That became mine. You know, that lyrical kind of playing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still have that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, anybody can play in time, I feel, if they're comfortable and experience as they grow. As a musician, I'm just one guy who's an example of it. That's my explanation. I'm contrarian in the need to not sound like someone else if I can help it.
Well, it works because I would say that there's not many guys that sound like you. I mean, it's... regardless of whether someone likes it or doesn't like it or any of that stuff, it is definitely a personal sound that you've got, you know. And I'd never really analyzed it much until recently, and then I was listening through a couple of your albums, and it really stood out. And I think it was around the time that Allan Holdsworth died, and I was listening through some of your stuff, and I thought, man, he's really got a lot of as in you've really got a lot of that legato, Holdsworth-esque kind of thing. It's not exactly the same.
That's a very fair assessment.
You know, yeah. It really stood out. The other thing I was that was asked when I asked about any questions from the community out there, one was asking about Bill Bruford, your days with Bill, and about the compositional process that went on there. Now, I mean, obviously that's a big topic, but so I wanted to ask, with my own spin on that, when you used to do the sessions with Bill, or any rehearsals and things like that, or when you developed those tunes, was it that you were reading stuff, or did you come up with the stuff yourself, or did it come from jamming together, or what was the process going on with all of that?
The process, as best as I can recall it, is first of all, you have to acknowledge Dave Stewart. I certainly acknowledge Dave Stewart as I would call him the most necessary member of that quartet in the underpinning of the harmony, in the writing, in the whole vibe of composition, the whole approach of that band. Everything that Allan did above and things that I did below couldn't have sounded anywhere near as good without Dave Stewart's contribution. Yeah. That's where this begins to answer this question. Dave was the primary composer, I think, maybe Bill and Dave, and they would bring in charts. I would, on my own terms, change things, get their permission. Is this what you would like? And we would progress from there. So a lot of the bass parts you hear on those records were given to me, changed by me, or created by me. Right. So it was an ongoing, I don't think we jammed too much. Wasn't a very good jam band in that we were atonal. I think there's a little jam on one song, and it's not my favorite.
You were a far cry from the Grateful Dead then.
I would say we were certainly a far cry. We were the ungrateful living in it. And so, yeah, that band was based on written music, based on written songs. And a lot of the times they would send me audio charts or audio, recordings. I would listen.
Yeah.
A lot of times they would come in with real parts. It was sort of an amalgamation of three approaches. But that was one of the great bands. And Dave Stewart is by far one of my great heroes in music. Taught me a lot, hanging out with him, hearing him, watching him work. He's something else.
Did Dave actually write some of the bass parts for you then?
I can't specifically recall, but since a lot of the music is his, I have to think so. Well, Hell's Bells was mine.
Oh, right. I was listening to that today.
So I did various little changes, but that's mine.
Yeah.
Worked, I am pleased to say.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. That was fun.
Thanks, Mark.